11 million people live in a kingdom the size of Indiana that sits at the crossroads of empires, where every civilization that mattered in the ancient world left footprints in the sandstone. Jordan is the country most travelers reduce to a single image of Petra. But the kingdom contains Roman cities as complete as anything in Italy. A desert that Lawrence of Arabia crossed on camelback, the lowest point on Earth. And a chain of crusader castles controlling trade routes that predate modern borders by centuries. This is a country without oil wealth in a region defined by it. A nation that has absorbed wave after wave of refugees until nearly half the population traces its roots to displacement. The water is running out. The economy depends on foreign aid and tourism. Yet the hospitality is legendary, and the sights are extraordinary. And subscribe to Global Lux Journeys and see Jordan as it actually is. From Petra's hidden valleys to Wadi Rum's desert camps. Petra is the ancient Nabataean capital carved into sandstone cliffs. A city that thrived from the 4th century BC by controlling incense and spice trade routes between Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. The treasury appears at the end of the Sikh, a narrow canyon whose 80-meter walls create a theatrical reveal that remains breathtaking regardless of how many photographs you have already seen. The site extends far beyond the treasury through the street of facades, the royal tombs, and the monastery reached by climbing over 800 steps to a facade even larger than the treasury, but visited by far fewer tourists. Wadi Rum is the desert valley whose sandstone mountains rise vertically from red sand in formations sculpted over millions of years into shapes so dramatic that the landscape has served as a filming location for Lawrence of Arabia, The Martian, and Dune. T.E. Lawrence based his operations here during the Arab Revolt, and his descriptions established the romantic image that tourism has exploited ever since. Desert camps range from basic tents to luxury bubbles with transparent ceilings for stargazing beneath a night sky where the Milky Way is visible as a thick band of light overhead. The Dead Sea sits at approximately 430 meters below sea level as the lowest point on Earth, with salt concentration over 30%, allowing swimmers to float effortlessly on the surface. The mineral-rich mud has been marketed for therapeutic properties since antiquity, and modern resorts line the Jordanian shore with spa treatments at every price point. The sea is shrinking at roughly 1 meter per year, as the Jordan River is diverted for agriculture, causing the shoreline to retreat and sinkholes to multiply in a slow-motion environmental crisis. Amman is the capital, a city of over 4 million people, spread across hills in a sprawl of white limestone buildings that reveals its character gradually to visitors willing to explore beyond the downtown tourist circuit. The citadel contains ruins spanning the Bronze Age through the Umayyad period, while the Roman amphitheater below seats 6,000 in a structure still hosting events 2,000 years after construction. The city divides between conservative, densely populated East Amman and wealthier, more liberal West Amman. And it rewards those who sit in Rainbow Street cafes and let the hospitality unfold. Jerash is one of the best preserved Roman provincial cities in the world, with the colonnaded Cardo Maximus, the Oval Plaza, the Temple of Artemis, and the South Theater, creating an archaeological complex so complete that walking through it feels like entering a functioning city whose residents simply stepped out. The city prospered in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD as part of the Decapolis League, and the South Theater's acoustics remain exceptional enough for daily performances. Jerash sits only 50 kilometers north of Amman, making it an easy day trip that deserves more time than the 2 hours most tour groups allow. Aqaba is Jordan's only port city, sitting at the northern tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, where 27 kilometers of coastline are squeezed between Israel and Saudi Arabia in a geography so compressed that 3 countries are visible from the beach. The coral reefs offshore are among the healthiest in the Red Sea, with over 500 fish species and occasional whale sharks, drawing divers from across the region. The city has served as a port for the Nabataeans, Romans, Crusaders, and Ottomans before Lawrence's forces captured it in 1917 in an attack from the desert that no one anticipated. Mount Nebo is the hilltop where Moses reportedly viewed the Promised Land before dying without entering it. With views on clear days extending across the Dead Sea to the hills of Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And the memorial church contains remarkable 6th century mosaic floors depicting hunting scenes and pastoral life in preservation quality that makes them among the finest Byzantine mosaics in the Middle East. Both Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis visited, reinforcing the site's significance for pilgrims who come to stand where Moses stood and look across the same landscape. Madaba is known as the City of Mosaics because the 6th century Madaba map in the Church of St. George contains the oldest surviving cartographic depiction of the Holy Land, created from small pieces of colored stone 1,500 years ago. The mosaic tradition extends throughout the city, with dozens of churches and homes containing Byzantine-era floors displayed in the archaeological park and local museums. But the city is predominantly Christian in a predominantly Muslim country, and the coexistence is genuine and unremarkable to locals who have been living this way for centuries. Bethany, beyond the Jordan, is the UNESCO-listed archaeological site identified as the location where John the Baptist baptized Jesus Christ, with remains including churches, baptismal pools, and caves used by hermits dating to at least the 5th century. The Jordan River at this point is disappointingly narrow and murky, reduced by upstream diversions to a fraction of its historical flow. Though pilgrims wading into the water focus on spiritual significance rather than hydrological conditions. Both Jordan and Israel offer baptismal experiences on their respective banks, though the UNESCO listing supports the Jordanian claim. The Dana Biosphere Reserve is Jordan's largest nature reserve, covering over 300 square kilometers from highland plateau down through sandstone cliffs to the desert floor. With this elevation, change creating ecosystems supporting over 800 plant species and 215 bird species. The accommodation ranges from the Fainan Eco Lodge in the desert lowlands to the Dana Guest House perched on the cliff edge with spectacular sunset views. Hiking trails range from short loops to multi-day routes descending through canyons that transition from Mediterranean vegetation to stark desert in barely 25 kilometers. Wadi Mujib is a deep canyon cutting through the Dead Sea's eastern shore, sometimes called Jordan's Grand Canyon. With the gorge over 500 meters deep and the river draining into the lowest nature reserve on Earth. The Sikh Trail involves wading, swimming, and scrambling through the narrow gorge with water ranging from ankle to chest depth in an adventure accessible to non-specialists but genuinely thrilling. The reserve is open April through October, as winter flash floods can fill the gorge within minutes and turn the gentle stream into a deadly torrent. Karak Castle is a Crusader fortress built in the 1140s on a hilltop, commanding views across the Dead Sea, controlling trade routes between Damascus and Egypt. The castle was held by Reynald de Chatillon, whose raids so enraged Saladin that recapturing Karak became a personal priority, and the siege of 1188 ended Crusader control. And the construction shows layered Crusader, Ayyubid, and Mamluk architecture, with dark vaulted corridors, kitchens, and dungeons retaining an atmosphere of medieval brutality that no amount of tourist signage can entirely domesticate. Alun Castle was built in 1184 by one of Saladin's generals to counter the Crusader presence across the Jordan Valley. Sitting on a forested hilltop with views toward the opposing Crusader fortress at Belvoir that has stared back for 8 centuries. The surrounding Ajloun Forest Reserve protects one of the last Mediterranean-type forests in Jordan, with evergreen oaks and wild pistachio providing habitat for wildlife that has disappeared from most of the country. The proximity to Jerash allows both sites to be combined in a day trip, covering Roman and medieval history through northern Jordan's most attractive countryside. Qis occupies the ancient Greco-Roman city of Gadara. Perched on a ridge with views encompassing the Sea of Galilee, the Golan Heights, and the Yarmouk Gorge across 3 countries and thousands of years of contested history. The ruins include a colonnaded street, theaters, and a basilica interspersed with black basalt Ottoman houses built directly on top of the Roman city, creating a layered landscape where ancient columns support modern roofs. The site receives far fewer visitors than Jerash, despite equally significant ruins and superior views, making it feel like a genuine discovery. The desert castles are Umayyad-era structures from the 7th and 8th centuries scattered across the basalt desert east of Amman, with Qasr Amra holding UNESCO status for its remarkably preserved frescoes depicting hunting scenes, bathing women, and a celestial dome that is one of the earliest known representations of the night sky. The frescoes are extraordinary because they depict human figures in a tradition soon prohibited by dominant interpretations of Islamic art. The circuit typically includes Qasr Harana and Qasr al-Azraq, where Lawrence was based during winter 1917, and makes an easy day trip from Amman. 13 places across a kingdom where empires left their mark in stone. If you're seeing Jordan beyond the treasury's facade, and subscribe to Global Lux Journeys, because 12 more destinations await where the ancient and the modern continue to negotiate their coexistence. Al Salt is the hilltop town that was nearly chosen as capital of Transjordan before Emir Abdullah selected Amman in 1921. A decision that left Al Salt frozen in a golden age of Ottoman architecture, while Amman grew into a modern capital. The UNESCO-listed historic center contains yellow limestone buildings blending Ottoman, European, and local Jordanian styles that reflect the cosmopolitan character of a merchant town, trading with Nablus, Jerusalem, and Damascus. The hospitality is notable even by Jordanian standards, with visitors frequently invited into homes for coffee by residents genuinely proud of their town. Shobak Castle was the first Crusader fortress built beyond the Jordan River in 1115. Perched on an isolated hilltop to protect the road between Damascus and Egypt. The castle fell to Saladin in 1189 after a siege that starved the garrison into surrender, and subsequent Ayyubid and Mamluk occupations added layers without entirely obscuring the Crusader structure. The ruins are less restored than Karak, but more atmospheric, with the isolated hilltop and absence of a surrounding town creating a sense of abandonment and views across empty landscape toward Wadi Araba. Little Petra is a smaller Nabataean site 5 kilometers north of Petra that served as a suburb or staging area with carved facades, dining halls, and water channels at a scale explorable in under an hour without the crowds or exhausting distances of the main site. The painted house contains the only known Nabataean ceiling paintings depicting vines, birds, and putti in a Hellenistic style. The entrance is free. The site is rarely crowded, and the narrow SIQ provides a miniature version of the Petra approach without the tour groups, making it an intimate complement to the famous original. The Ma'in hot springs are thermal waterfalls cascading down a hillside below Mount Nebo, with water heated by underground volcanic activity to temperatures reaching 63 degrees before cooling to tolerable levels in the bathing pools. The springs have been used since Roman times, with Herod the Great reportedly visiting for therapeutic benefits. The experience of sitting beneath naturally heated waterfalls surrounded by dramatic canyon walls provides a physical pleasure that the historical and archaeological sites elsewhere in Jordan cannot offer. And the descent from the highland plateau to below sea level takes barely 30 minutes. But Jordan is a kingdom that has survived by being useful to everyone and threatening to no one. A strategy that has kept the Hashemite monarchy in power for over a century, while neighbors collapsed around it. The Nabataeans carved Petra, the Romans built Jerash, the Crusaders fortified hilltops, the Umayyads painted desert palaces, and modern Jordanians inherited all of it, along with the responsibility of preserving what empires created while building a nation that can sustain itself. The water crisis is real, the economy is fragile, and the future is uncertain, but the hospitality is genuine. And the kingdom rewards travelers who come with curiosity rather than just a camera. Subscribe to Global Lux Journeys for more journeys through places more complex than the brochures suggest. 25 places across Jordan, from Petra's Canyon to Urbid's streets. All real, all ancient, all navigating the present with whatever the past left behind.